Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 146.
Learn how to do financial planning and
yes.
incorporate your financial planning into your grazing management.
You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, sharing information and stories of grass-based livestock production utilizing regenerative practices. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. You're growing more than grass. You're growing a healthier ecosystem to help your cattle thrive in their environment. You're growing your livelihood by increasing your carrying capacity and reducing your operating costs. You're growing stronger communities and a legacy to last generations. The grazing management decisions you make today impact everything from the soil beneath your feet to the community all around you. That's why the Noble Research Institute created their Essentials of Regenerative Grazing course to teach ranchers like you easy to follow techniques to quickly assess your forage production and infrastructure capacity in order to begin grazing more efficiently. Together, they can help you grow not only a healthier operation, but a legacy that lasts. Learn more on their website at noble.org/grazing. It's noble.org/grazing. On today's episode, we have McKinley Smoot and Mitch Dumke of Three Springs Land and Cattle. Them, along with their co-founder James Gilson, started Three Springs Land and Livestock in Utah, where they grass-fed, and grass-finished cattle, as well as doing pastured chickens. We talk about how that works with three people and getting started and some of those growing pains when you're getting started. And we had a growing pain ourselves on the podcast. Midway through the episode, Mitch's mic decided, I don't know what it decided, but anyway, we didn't get audio. So the first half of the podcast, we're talking to McKinley and Mitch. And then for the last half, it's just McKinley. So that the episode's a little choppy in places. I've tried to edit that and fix that. And that's completely on me. The software gave me an error, but I still thought we were okay and ended up losing some of Mitch's audio. Really good episode. I think you'll enjoy it. 10 seconds about my farm. I hate to admit this. I'm feeding hay to my cows. I've talked, we were in a little bit of a drought. We're kind of wet now. And I may have mentioned I've fed a few bells to them. So not a great lot, but I'm about to kick it up a gear. And this is the earliest I have fed hay in years. Some years are like that. So where we are on the farm, 10 seconds about the podcast. I mentioned last week we're going to do kind of a podcast refresh, and I said mid-December. I think we're going to start that December 1st, or the first episode in December. So next week, I still got a couple pieces to fall into place, but I think we're going to be ready to do a little bit of a transition. For you, when you're listening, just know it won't start with welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast. We're going to start it a little bit different. Same great content and hopefully a better resource for you. And speaking of resources, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they have a new listener resource guide. So immediately, I went to their site, signed up for it, and received it. I looked at it, and I thought, we should do that for the Grazing Grass podcast. But I wanted to do it a little bit different. Rather than being something you download that gets lost on your hard drive or you see it for a minute and it's gone, it's a 4-day email series, I guess would be the right word. So sign up, get an email, talks about the podcast. Next day, you get an email, talks about me. Following day, about the community and resources. And the fourth day, some other resources. So just to get you more knowledgeable about the podcast, you can sign up for it at the website. Go to grazinggrass.com. We have a banner at the top, a new listener resource guide. Click on it and you can sign up for it. You can also, we will put a link in our show notes as well. I know we're calling it the new listener resource guide, but I encourage you to go to it and click on it even if you're an OG and been here a while. Give you more information, and we'll see how it goes. I hope it provides value to you. I'd love to get feedback on it if it does, if it doesn't. But it's available. With that said, let's go ahead and talk to McKinley for the episode and talk to Mitch for a little bit at the beginning. McKinley and Mitch, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass podcast. We're excited you're here today.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Good
to be here.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Well, to get started, why don't we start with Mitch right off, because Mitch was the person I talked to first. Mitch, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sir, you bet. So my name is Mitch Dumpke. I'm living in Salt Lake City, Utah, but ranch with our partner McKinley and other partner James up in the Camas Valley of Utah, east of Salt Lake Valley. Yeah, I grew up in Utah, born and raised, had a few stints elsewhere, but I had a 10-year run in the tech industry and product management. And we've spent we're in our 4th season now as Three Springs Land and Livestock. So just getting our operation going as a regenerative, holistic ranch. But that's a little bit about me. I got 4 young kids, 10, 7, 5, and a year old. So staying busy with the kiddos.
Yes, you are. Yes. McKinley, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm McKinley Smoot. I grew up on a cattle ranch. My dad was a holistic resource manager back in the day, which has now kind of turned into holistic management. And so I just kind of grew up around that, being very not paying attention as kids and teenagers do. I didn't really notice what my dad was trying to do was important anyway. So that was in the early 90s, and he ended up getting out of that and went into real estate, which was kind of the family business. And so right now that's also what I do. And we just started this cattle ranch, and we lease a bunch of land in the Camas Valley. And my wife is actually 4.5 months pregnant, which is great.
And yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And so we're all just starting a whole thing here. Families,
starting our herds. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So my question for both of you, McKinley, it sounds like you grew up around ranching, so you may have thought, hey, this is something I have some interest in.
Yeah. I had no interest. Oddly enough, I had no interest in it until I was about 23 years old, and I'm 32 now. So I didn't understand it. Part of the reason, my dad did a lot of custom grazing for different people. And so there wasn't, which was great, but there wasn't like an attachment of like, this is our herd, or this is like these animals, it's just, it's great, but it's a little bit less involved. And so I just didn't understand it. I didn't care as a teenager. The things I cared about were not that, sports and all that. And so then I actually stumbled upon, and my dad told me all these stories growing up about working with these people. I had no idea who they are, but then I saw Alan Savory's TED Talk, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my life pretty dramatically, and ended up becoming an accredited professional with them about 5-6 years ago, and spending time with the folks there, and then also with Alan himself, and so we're trying to incorporate a lot of the holistic management framework into our operation, which shouldn't be that difficult, but it has been a challenge over time.
Now that was prior to you all starting Three Springs Land and Cattle, correct?
It was, yeah.
So why did you decide to go on that path of getting that accreditation?
That's a really good question. At the time I was really getting into bird watching, ornithology. Spending time looking through binoculars a lot, and I began to notice that there were really dramatically high, on our cattle ranch, high numbers of birds where the cattle had been or where they were going to. And so I had just gotten interested in kind of into ecology and the environment, and just from a recreational standpoint. And then I all of a sudden through watching that video, realized that I can people can make decisions that directly impact that. It's not just a thing that we visit, or, it's like, oh, I spent some time in nature. It's like, oh no, I actually have a relationship with
Oh,
nature
yes.
or, God's creation or however you want to refer to it. And that was a lot more impactful for me. And so I was like, I have to do this. And then once I started doing it, it's like, oh, there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah, down that rabbit hole, you're lost now.
I'm cooked.
Or found, I don't know.
Yeah.
Either
lost.
way.
It's probably both at the same time.
It's deep. He's gone.
Now, one thing when you say that I find very interesting, I just watched the Roots So Deep documentary, and we have birds on our land. I know where we'll have some bobwhite. The meadowlarks are thick. The killdeer love to nest on my driveway. And in watching that documentary, I was shocked by how different the bird populations of grassland birds could be from one farm to the next farm. And I really had not considered that before I watched that. So watching or doing bird watching and seeing birds out there, that's amazing. And as you watch that, it's like, oh, wait, everyone else doesn't have the meadowlarks and the bobwhite here. So that was very interesting and somewhat eye-opening to me. So I think that's very interesting, McKinley, that was kind of your path in was birds.
It was like a very small detail in my life. It wasn't like this big thing. It was just like, it just drew me to it. It's odd. It's odd, the things in life that change.
Oh, yeah. It is. It's amazing that this happens and somewhere you're doing this now. Yeah. Mitch, for you, did you always think, hey, I'm going to have a ranch and raise cattle?
Before we started this ranch, right before we started, I was a vegetarian trying to save the planet by not eating meat. So that's kind of that's where my head was at. So, excuse me, the third part of Three Springs Land and Livestock is our partner, James Gilson. He is a longtime friend of mine, and I was working in tech. I was trying to save the planet by not eating meat. I was involved more in environmental interests than agricultural interests. And James happened to hunt an elk, and he offered me some of his elk meat. And I told him, I'm not eating meat, I'm saving the planet. And he kind of scoffed at me and said, no, you can eat good meat. It's good for the planet. And I didn't believe him. And anyway, he sent me the TED Talk by Alan Savory.
Oh,
and I
yes.
sent him some other video that I thought was teaching me all the right things about meat and all. And understandably, industrial agriculture does have a lot of detrimental environmental issues. And so I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater there, but he showed me that TED Talk. It reminded me of some stuff I heard from Patagonia long ago about some bison ranches. And anyway, it got me thinking. And then the real fortuitous thing, kind of McKinley's bird moment, was when our partner James went to look at a house listing near McKinley, and McKinley was the listing agent. So McKinley is showing this random guy named James the house, and happens to mention that he was accredited with the Savory Institute. He didn't realize that James had just been down the rabbit hole of Savory Institute.
Oh, yes.
And then that connected. James called me afterward like he had seen an angel, which he was. If McKinley threw his hair back, you could see the angelic form that exists, But anyway, we kind of chatted more and more over 6 months, got to know each other because McKinley didn't know us, and we didn't know McKinley, and it was kind of a little bit of a dance, but it felt pretty good. And we decided, let's buy some cattle. We bought three pair of cattle in June of 2021. And a week later, at the same time, we bought our first 150 broilers. And that kind of just kickstarted the whole thing. McKinley had posted previously on Facebook in a community saying, hey, I want to try this regenerative agriculture. Does anyone have some land? And we really got connected to an amazing family that connected us to about 150 acres. And for the first 3 years, we had a free lease with them. And we're now paying them a lease. We want to operate a profitable business, recognizing all true expenses. So anyway, we're doing that now, and it's been a great thing. But my goal was never raising cattle. I love the open land. I love where we ranch. I've gone up here my whole life. Everyone's grandfather or great grandfather was a rancher, herder, farmer of some kind, and so I have that same connection to the land. But yeah, I came to it more from a environmental standpoint about healing landscapes and bringing back ecological functions to our soil systems and our grasslands.
So very interesting journeys for both of you to get to where you are now. I recall reading that about you being a vegan on your all's website.
Yeah.
How long were you a vegan, Mitch?
Oh, just about a year and a half, just enough to be dangerous and think I was doing the right thing. No, I respect people for different reasons making those decisions. I think, I think I was eating a lot of the wrong kind of meats. I don't think a fast food burger is the same thing as the grass finished beef we have in our freezer right now.
Right.
And so, I think there was some well intention behind that, and I think there's a lot of people who have those same and different intentions. But yeah, just probably about a year and a half there.
Yeah. Which is an interesting journey. And, people come to it for different reasons, and whatever their reasons are, I cannot knock those. I think it's great we have different viewpoints and we're able to have discussions about them. I think my wife would very readily be a vegan, but she married someone who likes livestock and raises too many of them, and we have to eat them. So,
that's right. It's an inventory issue. Like, sweetheart, I can't, what else are we going to do?
There's
that vegan thing is, we actually have, we have a great customer. I call her Vicky the Vegan. And because she legitimately calls herself that, she's a vegan.
Oh, yes.
But she came to she came to the Park City Farmers Market where we sell. And she asked about how we raise our birds and everything else. And she's like, you know what? I just haven't eaten chicken for 10, 20 years. I can't remember how long, because it never makes me feel good. And I said, well, this is how we raise it. I'm not forcing you to. And she's like, I'll try one. And then she went home that night and showed her husband. She's like, look what I got at the market with you when you were out and about. And he pulls out his bag. He says, well, when I was at the market, I bought a chicken from him too. So they come home with 2 chickens.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were shopping separate. And anyway, she comes back every year. And, the how it's raised and the nutritional value of that meat is so important. We spend a lot of time testing our meat every year and educating our customers about the nutrient density of our meat compared to other practices and other ranches. Not to necessarily make ourselves better, to just make sure people feel informed about what they're putting into their body and the value they're buying.
Yeah, I think that piece right there, that connection to where your food comes from, is so important. And we're so disconnected. I mean, I know I get a lot of my food through the McDonald's drive-through. And as far as I know, that's where it comes from. So it's so important that we go beyond that, and we're going out to those farms. That's what I love about agro-tourism, getting that connection back to the land and where our food comes from, and to understand what's going on for the consumer as well as the farmer. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit about both your journeys, but you all came together, and Mitch, you mentioned this a little bit ago, how you all met. And then you decided to start a ranch together?
That's right. And I always think about it that we kind of came from 3 different viewpoints. And McKinley, chime in here, please, too. But, from my perspective, I came from an environmental perspective. Specifically, James came in from a nutritional health perspective a little bit. And McKinley, I don't know how you would define how you came into it. A little more you had more of the agricultural background and the ranching background.
To a certain degree, yeah. I don't. It's just kind of. I truly. I feel like it just meant that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah,
at this point, I mean, I love the environmental standpoint, and I think, I feel like Mitch and I talk to so many people who don't think that there's any money in agriculture, and that's really concerning.
Oh, that is.
From just like a future parent standpoint. Of like, yeah, there's no future. If there's no future in agriculture, I mean, it's problematic 100 years in the future. And so I think we're kind of on a mission to show like, no, you can make it, and you don't need to be massive, to be this massive ranch or anything like that. And so, and then also making it work for our community, and our community's highly supportive of us. I mean, that's the most inspiring and energizing part, I think, of the whole thing. And so, yeah, I don't know what viewpoint I came through to try to figure out. There's something pushing me to do it, and I don't know what it is.
Something that's strong with us, Cal, though, is that the fact that where we ranch is in the Camas Valley. It's east of Park City, Utah. It's about 25 minutes east of Park City.
Okay.
And if people have heard of Park City, it's a very well-to-do. It's the wealthiest county in Utah. It's kind of like an Aspen or a Tahoe or Vail or something. And so there's a lot of pressure on our valley they always say the billionaires pushed out the millionaires. And that's nothing wrong if they want to come here, but it's kind of about how the land is getting developed in that process and the land values. There's some challenges around that. And we want to give ourselves and any other producer the opportunity for their land to stay profitable, to stay in their family, and to move on to the next generation. So we have a lot of still beautiful open landscapes, and we want our best to help show the productivity in the practices and principles that we follow.
Oh yeah, that is a problem so many people are dealing with, that farmland is getting sold and developed and they're not making any more farmland.
No.
So
No.
And like you said there, if you're not profitable, you're not sustainable. So you've got to have that profitability mindset so you can be here in 10 years.
Yeah. In our country, it's funny you say that. If profitability means the land stays open.
Oh yeah.
Because then the next generation's interested in it. So, you made money. You made money doing this, and it feels like those two things are directly correlated. That whether the land has declined through practices or because land values have climbed and things are still the same, if the profitability isn't there, it seems like the land at this point in the history of our country, it just disappears for an economic engine. It's I don't know how to critique that or what to say about that, but it's kind of scary.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the solution there is. Hopefully this podcast helping share how other people are doing things, encourage producers to take that next step on their journey, can help some people be a little bit more profitable, do a little bit more sustainable or regenerative practices. Y'all got together, you started this farm, you bought a few pair of cows and broilers. You were able to find some land to use.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have to do anything to get ready, or were you able to just go buy some cows and get some chicks?
Yeah, we bought some electric fencing equipment, and we had to fix up a few fences, but that was really it. And being creative. And then we also we are indebted to Joel Salatin's Lego handbook of how to build structures. So we built a Salatin style chicken tractor. And that was about it at the time.
Yeah, good fences. The land we were running was historically ran cattle on it.
Oh, okay.
Kind of in a continuous grazing model. So, like McKinley said, the fences needed some tightening and a little fixing. But I think starting with 6 cattle was just a godsend for us for a few reasons, because we started in 2021, which in Utah in the Western United States was a drought year.
Oh, yes.
So, operating at that time was really on 45 acres, and to only have 6 cattle on 45 acres was really fortuitous. So we weren't having to sell off anything. We really did tight daily management, daily moves. 6 cattle, we had them on McKinley, 1/3 acre or 1/4 acre paddocks.
An eighth and like a third. Yeah.
Enough to keep them comfortable. They were tiny, and we looked silly. We looked silly at some level, moving this small little herd every single day. Relative to our community, that's not the common practice.
Right.
But it was a good way for us to cut our teeth and figure out a few things. And, to swing from that dry year to then having 2 of the largest snowfalls on record, which is where we get most of our precipitation from, was kind of a good experience on both sides of the spectrum. But yeah, that first year was pretty interesting that way. Just we didn't have, when you have 6 cows, you kind of look at each other and you say, okay, where are we going to make money for the next 2 years? Because those little heifers, those little bulls aren't going to turn into anything for 24, 26 more months.
Right.
So how, as a startup, do you make money in the ranching business? And chickens were going to be our profit center in the short term to actually get some cash flow going. And that's really why James, pretty much on his own, bought 150 chickens. And then after he ordered the chickens, we didn't build a brooder. We threw them in a shed gently.
yes.
And we were building the Salatin tractors while they were brooding. And that is not what I recommend ever. But that's what we did. And, I don't think this is a unique quote on any ranch, let alone a startup. But our unofficial slogan is, we'll figure it out. And, that's not a bad thing either.
Mitch, I think the first time I raised some brooders, I decided I was going to do a few pastured poultry. I think I needed to move them out as I was finishing up my Salatin pen so I could get them moved out, So I do get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think you bring up a great point there. Cattle's not a quick profit. You're not going to put some cows out there and say, oh, this is where our income's coming in. It takes a long time to get them to market. So settling on chickens, I think, was a very good move. But how did that go for you all? Were you able to grow them and keep them alive and get them to market? Because that's the first part. Before you get to market, you got to keep them alive.
Yeah. The chickens, for that first group, we had some predator issues. We used just normal chicken wire, and we were in a riparian area and kind of bordering wilderness area in Utah, which means there's a lot of skunks and raccoons. So we had a predator event that probably killed 10.
Oh yeah,
the first night.
Oh no.
But then we figured out how to take care of that, and then we didn't have any loss after that. So we were, but yeah, no, we had that experience. It was really the following year that we had a lot more issues with mortality. But
yeah, and 150 birds. Just to your question on the market, I mean, we were 100. We had zero mortality in the brooder stage. I think we finished probably 120 birds, McKinley. Honestly, I can't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
And we slaughtered them in the field over 2 days, highly inefficient, but we got it done. And 120 birds, that's family and friends. That's pretty easy to move at some level. Like, we had enough of a community at that point. We had enough friends and family that we could sell those pretty quick. We didn't have to have it all figured out. So that first year was a good test run. Profitability doesn't really exist, especially with 3 partners at 120 birds.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
But what it did do for us is it put us in a place in the community as pastured poultry producers, which are few and far between in Utah, let alone probably, relative to the number of birds produced in this country, it's very small, but especially in Utah. And so by us putting us positioned as a pastured poultry producer, especially in Park City, where they are an affluent community who spend a lot of money on their health and on healthy food, we got our name recognition and a brand established as that. And so we've been doing that year over year. And now all of a sudden, when we want to sell beef, we already have an email list of 700 people.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got people asking us every time we're selling chicken, do you sell beef? And we just say, well, hold on and we'll get you there. And so it was very helpful that we had established that base through a unique value proposition as poultry. But McKinley kind of hinted at it. But the next year, we decided to grow our operation. But in growing our operation, we actually, I guess it was not the next year, but the year after, 2023, where we had a predation event of 190 birds out of 240 birds killed by a skunk, a baby skunk, a young skunk. And going into 2024, we barely wanted to do chickens at all because it was just traumatic for a lot of reasons. And not just that, overall, our mortality rate last year on chickens was 41% for a host of reasons. It was horrible. We lost, out of 1,500 birds, 41% never made it to a customer. But we kind of looked back and we just said, our community knows us for our poultry. And if anything else, we need to at least continue that brand recognition and marketing effort. But our customers also really want this product. We already sell out of it too fast as it is. And so it's kind of been an interesting place. A lot of people know us as the chicken people, even though I think we kind of consider ourselves as equally cattle people. But to our end consumer, it's more the chicken.
And that may have been their first connection with you. And then the beef's coming on a little bit later. Now, one thing I think I read on your website, you guys are non-GMO and soy-free. Have you been doing that with your chickens the whole time?
No. You want me to go on this, McKinley?
No, you got it. You know it.
We can talk about later, but, we've kind of tried to figure out divisions of labor a little bit this year. And so I spent more time in the chicken world. McKinley spent more time in the cattle world. We still share chores occasionally and all that, but it's been a little helpful, I think, for us to be able to go a little deeper and a little more on that journey. We've always been non-GMO. We had organic our first year, but we had corn and soy in it. People love the organic label and the non-GMO label. But then, our fancy friends who like to buy our food ask for non-corn and non-soy. And for any listeners wondering why, it's primarily because of the omega-6s that are present in corn and soy. They're not bad for you, but in the amounts that we consume them in our American diet, there's a lot of corn and soy. And so for us, we said, well, let's try a corn-free, soy-free feed. So we went all in on organic, corn-free, soy-free, non-GMO. I think we had every label you think someone would want to pay a premium, and it backfired. It backfired horribly. And that led to a lot of the death of our birds last year.
Oh, yes.
Because for a host of reasons, but a couple of specific reasons would be that the soy replacement with sesame seed, you have to be careful with sesame seed because it's high in phytic acid, which compromises calcium nutrient absorption. If your birds don't have calcium and they're a fast-growing bird like a Cornish cross, they could get rickets. So we had birds in our mobile structures with rickets, essentially, unable to move themselves. So Cal, here we are trying to be this holistic, humane operation, but somehow in the process, we got our birds unable to move themselves in the pasture. And so I kind of jokingly and sadly would call ourselves a mobile CAFO, where we were just, it's traumatic to talk about, but we had to hand move 100 birds every day, 24 feet in the field. It was not our best moment. It was frustrating because we were trying to do our best to help our animals. And I think we over-prioritized the needs of our customer over the needs of the animal.
Oh, yes.
And so this season, we went back to being actually still soy-free, but having a local non-GMO corn sourced. We worked with local millers. Instead of buying feed from California, we bought feed once last year and it sat and oxidized by the end of the year and wasn't as good. This year we said we want fresh milled feed, no older than 30 days. So we always had fresh feed coming in, locally sourced, more connection to the growers and millers. And our mortality rate was 2.6% this year.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So anyway, that's a long answer to your question about being corn-free or being soy-free, but that's the context. I think if you want to be organic, at least in Utah, you've got to be buying inputs from Asia, which for us in our holistic context, that's not where we want to be. So it's a little bit of our background there.
And Mitch, really appreciate you sharing that struggle of 2023, because wherever a person is on this journey, everything's just not peaches and cream.
No.
You're going to have some growing, I can't even think the right word, but you're going to have some issues that you're going to have to overcome, whatever they may be. I always think back, and I don't even know where I've heard this, but it's like when a rocket's spaceships head towards the moon, they're making minor adjustments all the time to the course. Every once in a while they're checking, are we still aiming for the right spot? That visual for me just really says it. In what we're doing, we're looking at this end goal that's very complex because, as anyone from the Savory Institute will tell us, as we look at this whole system, it's not an easy, simple system. we're looking at that and we're trying to get there, but we're going to have to make adjustments over time to figure out how to get there. So I appreciate you sharing your struggle, because so often we get the highlight reel on Instagram, and it's important that people realize we do have these struggles.
Yeah, we try to be edutainment on social media.
Oh, yes.
We try to be transparent, though, and I think that's one of the benefits and blessings of the way we're organized, is that me, McKinley, and James aren't family. We're not a 4th generation ranch that's maybe in the red right now, and there's a little bit of pride and protection to the family name to not want to admit the things that aren't going well. We show our financials. If anyone asks, I have a live spreadsheet of all of the expenses this year associated with our poultry. We'll share our sales with our customers or anyone who wants to know. So to us, it's so valuable to have the education and transparency in your operation, because if I am so blessed we are collectively, but I've really been going to the APA conference every year, the American Pastured Poultry Producer Association conference.
Oh, yes.
They have an amazing community forum group online. It's $50 to be a member, or $60. And I mean, holy cow, I've easily saved $1,000 in saving chickens' life and cost. I mean, it's so valuable. I'll be speaking at it this year, actually, about some of our learnings from 2023. But the community around agriculture is really important, and we just feel really fortunate to have all that support.
Excellent. On the poultry, I raised one group before, a pastured poultry, and that's all I did. But actually, I have a few chicks in the brooder right now that I'm
Giddy up.
do. It's kind of late in the season, but I have a little bit better weather than you all do.
Yeah, it snowed yesterday here, so we're not putting anything out in the field.
Yeah.
One thing I'll tell this to any listener who cares, but Cornish cross don't do as well at above 5,000 feet, and we should have known better. We're at 6,500 feet, so we went Freedom Ranger this year, and we strongly recommend that.
Oh, yes. And that worked out well for you?
Fantastic. Super resilient to the cold weather, the warm weather, the fluctuations. Just a little more personality. So we really enjoyed the Freedom Ranger. The meat quality was great. Took a little longer to get to weight, but we made up for it in the ones that survived. So,
are you looking at like a 10-week or 12-week grow period versus 8 weeks, or what kind of time period?
Originally we thought we'd do 10 weeks on the roosters and 11 and 12 weeks on the hens. We ended up slaughtering all around 11, and that worked out well. That was our average weight was about just under 4.5 pounds of dressed weight on whole birds. So
very good.
Yeah.
Did you notice when you compare the feed intake for your Freedom Rangers to the feed intake of your Cornish cross, was there a big difference, even though you're keeping 1.5 times as long?
Yeah, we noticed that, it's about 12 to 13 pounds on a Cornish. And then for our Freedoms, it was about 17 or 18 pounds per bird for the life of the bird. So it does add up, and they're ravenous. I mean, the challenge for us is we don't live on the farm. We don't live on the ranch. So ideally you can feed birds twice in a day at least. Right. And that kind of helps them manage their consumption habits a little bit. But because we are off farm, when we go, we give them the feed in the mid-morning, and they're pretty ravenous if they didn't get enough the night before. And we're trying to avoid the ravenous feeding because we don't want them to be scratching each other, injuring each other, creating blood, because then they peck the blood, then they get the blood, they like the taste. Yeah. It's a cannibalistic world out there. So we ended up trying to give them more than they needed every day. So our feed management was a little tricky that way because we don't live on farm, but yeah. And we don't do like soaked feed. Soaked feed would also help with saving the amount of feed you give them. If you let it ferment for 24 hours, it unlocks more of the nutrients. It expands it in their gut with water as well. So they don't have to eat as much that way. But anyway.
Yeah, very interesting. It reminds me of myself at a buffet. I try to avoid them now, but
yeah.
McKinley, we've left you out just a little bit talking about these chickens. Let's talk about your all's cattle. Obviously, I have to ask what breed you all went with, and how's the cattle portion of your farm going?
The cows they're just a lot less maintenance than the poultry.
Oh yes,
So they're part of the family at this point. But yeah, we went with the 3 we bought were just kind of conventional. One was a baldy cow, one was a Simmental Angus mix, and then the other one was just a black Angus. But after talking to Alan Williams, he made a recommendation of looking at least the closest in our area that was kind of bona fide was looking at 5L Red Angus. So we ended up getting some Red Angus cattle that their phenotypes of kind of a little bit on the smaller side of moderate frame cattle. And they look like refrigerators turned on their sides and just very thrifty. Their capacity to eat grass is just unbelievable. And so we ended up going that route. And then we recently just bought some Baldies and Black Angus because it's relatively difficult to find cattle at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
We're really looking to grow the herd. So we bought 10 more heifers just recently. And so, yeah, that was kind of the breed we like. We're not really attached to a breed, though. We're more looking at the phenotypes and at least what we've had success with for our operation. We just don't do super well with framey cattle, with moving them every day. They just don't seem to put on the weight, and the moms seem to struggle a little bit more. And so that's kind of the route we went. But we're open to any breed if they look and operate the right way. We don't have any qualms with them.
Oh yeah, that form and function so much more important than breed.
Yes,
but just as my questions on every episode, we get so wrapped up in breed. So yeah, very true. So you all have been doing this long enough. You have finished some of your own calves.
We have. Yes, sir.
How did that go? Because I assume you grass finished, and grass finish can be a little tricky till you get it figured out.
It can be. Yeah. So we do grass finish. At the moment, our whole herd is together. So our finishing steers, our calves, our heifers, they're all in the same paddock, with the exception of getting a bull out when we don't want to calve. We calve late spring, early summer. And so, but yeah, we take our cattle, and we're very lucky to live where we live. The Camas Valley is this is my opinion, probably one of the best places to grass finish cattle. It's high altitude. We have a lot of water. For Utah, that's a unique thing. We have 2 major rivers that flow through the valley that are significant to the whole region. And so we finish our cattle usually it's about 28 months. And we typically are getting, this last time we got hanging weights of around 899 pounds.
Oh, yes.
And they turned out fabulous. They're probably
grading. Wonderful.
Yeah, we're grading probably choice and sometimes a little bit higher on certain things depending on the cut. And we castrate late as well. We calicrate our bulls in late fall. We'll be doing that at the end of November probably.
Oh yeah.
So they get a little bit bigger, a little bit faster that way for us. And we're not really at a size right now where we can be taking heifers that don't meet our phenotype criteria, but we will be probably at that point very soon. And so we're still trying to grow the herd right now. From a profitability standpoint, we need to just grow the herd. We've been doing really well with our meat. Mitch mentioned before that we get both our poultry and our beef tested with, I don't know how we got lucky in the state of Utah, but there's a guy named Stefan van Vliet who decided to do metabolomics and nutrient density testing in meats. And he's just up the road from us.
Oh, yes.
And so we send that to them, and we grade quite high, and that's something we take a lot of pride in. Our omega-6 to omega-3 ratios are really low, like 1.2. And then we're averaging higher on, different phytochemicals and more minerals in our animals than conventional, feedlot beef. And so, that stuff that we're really, we're tickled by that. And so But I don't know. We seem to fall into it. We kind of took, Alan Williams has kind of been a mentor for us early on, and he, gave us a recipe, and we just followed it. And it.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
on the grass finishing part, because that was something I didn't even know anyone who did that back in the day when my dad was in the cattle industry, and so that was something we had to really lean on other experts for, and so we're kind of indebted to other people to figure out how to do that, because it is tricky, and I don't think we could do it if we, a lot of guys try to take them around 20 or 18 months. It just doesn't seem to turn out the same way.
Yeah, got to get a little bit of age on them.
Yeah.
I have one question I want to ask before we get to the overgrazing section. I know we've already talked longer than when I usually transition, but you all started this as acquaintances, friendship grew, but 3 partners coming into a farm. What were some things that you all did to make that successful?
Well, first thing we did is we created the legal entity, and honestly, we could probably improve, I don't know, probably the documents about how that functions a little bit more, but it's still riding at the moment on like the passion and love for each other and what we do. And so we all contributed financially equal, and we've at the time that was all equally, and we're trying to make sure that we keep that going, and every year we have a long planning session. It's usually 2 days.
Yes.
We go over kind of our, the holistic context of where each of us is at, and make sure everything is functioning, what's not working. And so we have to be frank with each other occasionally, which is good. Everybody needs to be that way with an operation or with a ranch.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, if you're not monitoring what's going on and you just keep going, eventually, failure tends to follow you. And so we tried to really do that. And we check in with each other pretty regularly throughout the year to make sure, Mitch has been doing the poultry, I've been more on the cattle, and we got to make sure that we're all doing okay, and we cover for each other if we need a break, depending on what's going on. And so, it allows us to have vacations. And so our quality of life is really important to each other.
Oh, yes.
That making sure that we spend time with our families, and if we need to do that, we can cover for them, etc. The problem with ranching that people forget is the quality of life is as integral as the money. Otherwise, a lot of people want to be doing it. And so, we're a little bit nervous on other people's money. And even though most people say you should use other people's money to make money, we're a little cagey on that idea at the moment.
Yeah, because anytime you get shareholders or VCs in, they may be in your ear, and that's going to affect your focus. So you got to be tread really careful there. I'm going to say that. I assume that because no one has offered to invest in me on this. But that's my assumption. So McKinley and Mitch, it's been great talking to you all, but we need to go ahead and transition to our overgrazing section sponsored by Redmond.
At Redmond, we know that you thrive when your animals do. That's why it's essential to fill the gaps in your herd's nutrition with the minerals that they need. Made by nature, our ancient mineral salt and conditioner clay are the catalyst in optimizing the nutrients your animals get from their forage. Unaltered and unrefined, our minerals have the natural balance and proportion that your animals prefer. This gives your herd the ability to naturally regulate their mineral consumption as they graze. Our minerals won't just help you improve the health of your animals, but will also help you naturally build soil fertility so you can grow more nutrient-dense pasture year after year. Nourish your animals, your soil, and your life with Redmond. Learn more at redmondagriculture.com.
And one thing we've talked about today was you all getting started, but it's also very challenging to get started when you've got to grow your herd, your land base, and keep up with, healthy grazing management. So how were you all able to accomplish that?
The thing we tend to run into for us is we're not stocked enough. And in order to get the adequate amount of animal impact, that, that short duration, high intensity grazing that people talk about, you need to be stocked correctly, in my opinion. And we are not. Kind of as Mitch mentioned before, we're, the cattle prices and, growth and everything like that has limited us in our own unique context from being able to bring in more cattle. And a lot of people are not interested in our local area and custom grazing just because the herd has been thinned pretty dramatically from that drought and then winters. And anyway, it's been an interesting combo that way for us. But when it comes to, we weren't able to overgraze this year. In fact, our feed got way far ahead of us. And I'm personally not an advocate for like saying, okay, if you can't get everything, you just leave ground for stockpile grazing during the winter. We will get anywhere between 3 and 4 feet of standing snow. So that if we don't get to our grass, that means we are actually potentially not financially viable, which at the moment we are working to do, and we need that animal impact. And so when we were smaller, I honestly, just having spoken to Alan, and he is so convicted. I've never met a more convicted and dedicated person in my life, ever. It's kind of a different thing, but I spent time with him in Colorado for 5 days, and he just drilled into me and a couple educators' heads that if you do not get real animal impact, and real animal impact is, and like he says, like imagine, 50,000 bison, African bison, and they're moving, and 5 grown adult male bison were trampled to death in that move. That's the type of animal impact you need to get to keep your grasses functioning. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't do that. Like straight up, we don't do that. Except for maybe in 1 or 2 places where we have a shade structure. And so we've minimized overgrazing completely in our operation. And for us, overgrazing means returning too soon. And so if you graze a plant, depending on where you're at in the world, you'll have a recovery period, or it will go dormant before then if it even recovers. And if you come in within that recovery period of the plant, then that's overgrazing. And so it's really a function of time rather than overgrazing. I mean, it's something we try to teach people who come out to the ranch who want tours about what we're doing. A lot of people think, well, if you just graze the plant too low, that's overgrazing. And a lot of people think that sheep just overgraze, period. It's like, no, that's not the case, because historically you had bison, pronghorn deer, elk, mule deer, whitetail deer, all following each other. And occasionally plants were definitely overgrazed because you probably had a herd of mule deer following a herd of 3 million bison at some point. 5 days later, that's overgrazing, depending on the time of the year. And so, but it was getting that animal impact. We do ecological monitoring for different conservation groups, and fascinatingly enough, a lot of these places are technically overgrazing in certain areas, but it's actually thicker and denser grass than the places that the cattle avoid because it's either too dry or it's too wet, etc. And once they get off, it's actually a denser stand or sward of grass. And so for me, in our own operation, that's something that we can't even achieve overgrazing because we don't have the adequate numbers. And we struggle to get animal impact over our whole piece of land that we lease at the moment. So yeah.
McKinley, if I'm understanding you clear, when we talk about your acreage, your grazing, you don't have enough animals to do the animal impact you would like to do. So rather than do the animal impact on a portion and leave the other fallow for a year, you're going to it and grazing it, but you're doing it without getting that animal impact you'd like to get.
Correct. Yes. That sums it up in a nutshell. We try to utilize the whole piece of ground because a lot of people start saying, well, you didn't do anything with it, then you don't need it.
Oh,
And so there's a social context there in this particular valley. It's like nothing's being done on it.
Oh, yeah.
Then you don't need it. It's like, well, we do. There's a future there that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And so, and in certain areas, we are achieving that by using stock density and small paddocks in certain areas. But the problem we run into is that because we're grass finishing, the palatability of the grass goes down dramatically. And so we're a little bit nervous about our finishing ability if we don't move fast enough on the piece of ground, just letting the whole thing seed out or lignify over the winter. And so, we try to, our whole goal is to utilize the ground as much as we can. Because if we're not utilizing our whole ranch in a year, that's money lost to us, especially in our context with the winter. I know some people have they don't have winters like this and they don't want to pay for hay. And so there's different contexts people need to consider. But for us, if we're not utilizing the whole thing, it's truly, we're losing money, hemorrhaging it.
And you bring up a really good point there. You've got that converse of the land available that you need to use or forage out there. You've got your animal impact. But the other thing is you're trying to finish some animals on grass. So they have a higher nutritional requirement than those over mature plants can give them.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a nice balancing act on a few different points.
Yes. And maybe someday in the future, we might separate our finishers out from our cattle. But at the moment, we want all of our cows in one herd to get as much animal impact as we can.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll have, this year, we kind of ranged, right? So we were anywhere between 3/4 of an acre to 4 acres in each of our moves. And so, and that wasn't, we did do moves every day, but we found that same thing happened if we're trying to finish, that the grass starts to lignify. And so we found it's like, okay, we're getting incredible animal impact on half the ranch and not getting any for the other half. And then it's winter and then we got to get them out of here.
McKinley, it's time for us to transition to a famous 4 questions sponsored by Ken Cove Farm Fence.
Ken Cove Farm Fence is a proud supporter of the Grazing Grass podcast and grazers everywhere. At Ken Cove Farm Fence, they believe there's true value within the community of grazers and land stewards. The results that follow proper management and monitoring can change the very world around us. That's why Ken Cove is dedicated to providing an ever-expanding line of grazing products to make your chores easier and your land more abundant. Whether you're growing your own food on the homestead or grazing on thousands of acres, Ken Cove has everything you need to do it well. From reels to tumblewheels, polytwine to electric nets, water valves to water troughs, you'll find what you're looking for at Ken Cove. They carry brands like Speedrite, O'Brien's, Kiwi Tech, Strainrite, Job, and more. Ken Cove is proud to be part of your regenerative journey. Call them today or visit kencove.com and be sure to follow them on social media and subscribe to the Ken Cove YouTube channel at Ken Cove Farm Fence for helpful how-to videos and new product releases.
They're the same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our first question, what is your favorite grazing grass-related book or resource?
I'm pretty biased towards holistic management at Common Sense. And what's the full title? The Holistic Management textbook is one of my favorites by Alan Savory and Jody Butterfield.
McKinley, excellent resource there. Our second question, what's your favorite tool for the farm?
Good question. We still love our conveniences. Other than the feed of the cattle, which are probably my favorite tool, the actual tool in my hands that we use regularly, I really like the Speedrite Energizer remote.
Oh, yes.
Hands on and off from wherever we're at, because I don't like getting shocked. I'm as averse to that
either
as our cattle are. And yeah, that's probably my favorite tool that I have that I can use in my hand.
That remote can be pretty handy, and I agree, McKinley. I do not want to get shocked.
No.
If I'm okay with getting shocked by my fence isn't hot enough.
Here you go.
I don't want to touch it.
Yeah, you want to be knocked on the ground by that thing.
Yeah. Our third question, what would you tell someone just getting started?
Good question. Probably for me, probably two things depending on their I'd probably ask them some questions to understand where they're at in life.
Right.
But first thing would probably, depending on if they have another job and they're just trying to ease into it, start small. But if that is not an option.
McKinley, lastly, where can others find out more about you?
They can find us. You can find us on Instagram. We try to be present on Instagram. We do put things up, don't get me wrong, but it's still social media is a weird thing. Like find us on Instagram at 3 Springs, Utah. You can also visit our website at 3springsutah.com. We do send out newsletters. We're trying to become more consistent and actually have something worth reading there. We also put out what we have available. We are really a regional food supplier. We don't really operate outside of the state of Utah, which I know is a bummer for some people. We apologize. It just doesn't fit into our quality of life right now.
Yeah.
Of wanting to package and deal with all that stuff. And so, but if you want some fun and silly things about cows and chickens, follow us on Instagram. It's probably the best way to do it.
Really appreciate you coming on and sharing today. Enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Cal.
I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I know I did. Thank you for listening. And if you found something useful, please share it. Share it on your social media. Tell your friends. Get the word out about the podcast. Helps us grow. If you happen to be a grass farmer and you'd like to share about your journey, go to grazinggrass.com and click on Be Our Guest. Fill out the form and I'll be in touch. We appreciate your support by sharing our episodes and telling your friends about it. You can also support our show by buying our merch. We get a little bit back from that. Another way to support the show is by becoming a Grazing Grass Insider. Grazing Grass Insiders enjoy bonus content, monthly Zooms, and discounts. You can visit the website, grazinggrass.com, click on support, and they'll have the links there. Also, if you haven't left us a review, please do. It really helps us as people are searching for podcasts. And I was just checking them, and we do not have very many reviews for 2024. So if you haven't left us a review, please do. And until next time, keep on grazing grass.